Thanks very much indeed. You will each have up to, each of the two deputations will have up to 5 minutes to make your case to members. The microphone works by pressing the button and a red light comes on. We look forward to hearing what you have to say, and there may be questions at the end of the session, but for the time being, we very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Provost, Leader and elected members for this opportunity to speak today. We are presenting this deputation on behalf of Edinburgh Women's Aid, Edinburgh's Specialist Domestic Abuse Service. I'm Linda Rogers, CEO of Edinburgh Women's Aid. We exist to support women and children affected by domestic abuse in Edinburgh and have been doing this successfully for more than 50 years. We support more than 2,000 women and more than 250 children each year. Year on year, our services get busier and busier as more and more women and children come forward from support. We're here to urge the City of Edinburgh Council to reject motion number 8.5 for the following reasons. This motion should be opposed not only because of the veiled threat to our funding, but because of the explicit threat to our ability to use our expertise to deliver the best, most trauma-informed and safest services to women and children affected by domestic abuse in Edinburgh. In our 2024 Care Inspectorate inspection, we were graded 6 outstanding by the Care Inspectorate. We are the experts in our field of work and in the delivery of services to vulnerable women and children in Edinburgh, and we need to be able to decide how that is best done. Our organisation was set up by women who recognised that women and children who were being abused had nowhere to go. Over the years, we've successfully campaigned to improve women and children's rights to housing, services and justice. Everyone benefits from the improvements in the law that we, our predecessors and our sisters around Scotland have worked for tirelessly. Our long-standing policies, just because they're in the news doesn't mean they're new, are in line with the provisions of the Equality Act and are part of our trauma-informed approach. All of our work is informed by the 6 principles of trauma-informed practice: safety, trust, choice, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural consideration. Women who have been abused have the right to expect a trauma-informed service. Our policy on group work rests on feedback from survivors that they would self-exclude from groups that included trans women. In particular, we found that women from vulnerable and minoritised communities were most likely to voice this. We operate a fine balance between meeting the needs and the rights of the different communities we serve, but we will always prioritise women's feelings of safety in our service provision and work in line with our trauma-informed principles. Further, this motion appears to be based on a misrepresentation of our services. The wide range of services that we offer includes telephone, court advocacy, drop-in, one-to-one support all over the city. As part of our homelessness contract with the Council and within our wide range of services, we provide a small number of shared refuges, 20 spaces. As part of this contract, we're required to provide single-sex spaces in these shared refuge. This is the same criteria applied to all single-sex homeless accommodation in Edinburgh. But as well as being a criteria for our contract, Edinburgh Women's Aid has always operated its shared refuges as single-sex services for the dignity, safety and privacy of the women using these accommodations. We also run 11 single occupancy refuges which are not subject to the same constraints, and trans women can access these if required. The motion refers to Edinburgh being a welcoming city for LGBTQ+ people, which we fully welcome. City of Edinburgh Council is always also signed up to Equally Safe, Scotland's strategy to tackle violence against women and girls. City of Edinburgh Council's commitment to meeting both these aspirations is admirable, but they are not mutually exclusive. But equally, they do not mean that every service is open to every single person. Specialist services exist for a reason, and tailoring services to minorities and/or particular groups who are vulnerable is to be welcomed and is not in and of itself exclusionary. It's always disappointing that women's organisations, particularly those set up to tackle men's violence against women, are the only organisations that are targeted on the matter of single-sex services. And it's interesting that there's no mention in the motion of a similar concern about men's homelessness shelters in Edinburgh. I'm happy to confirm that Edinburgh Women's Aid remains the leading provider of domestic support to all women in Edinburgh, and that within the remit of our service, as a service by and for women, we regularly and effectively provide support to the LGBT community and will continue to do so. LGBT women and females who identify as non-binary and are impacted by domestic abuse can use all and any of our services. Trans women impacted by domestic abuse can access all of our services with the exception of group work and shared refuge. Our children's service is open to anyone affected by domestic abuse under the age of 18. In the year 24-25 to date, we have worked with 2,336 women. 4.5% of them disclosed an LGBT identity to us. Almost 60% of those were bisexual women. 19%, less than 1% of the overall number, were trans women. 11% were lesbians and 2% were non-binary. Anyone facing...
to ask you to sum up, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone facing abuse in their relationship deserves support, and we work closely with the other providers of domestic support, abuse support in the LGBT community to provide a high-quality, coordinated community response.
Thanks very much for your deputation. We'll now hear from Equally Safe Edinburgh and look forward to hearing what you have to say. You two have up to 5 minutes to make your case.
Thank you, Lord Provost and elected members, for this opportunity to speak today. I'm Leslie Johnston. I'm the Vice Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the Equally Safe Edinburgh Committee, formerly known as Edinburgh Violence Against Women Partnership. So we're an active multi-agency partnership between Edinburgh-based Violence Against Women Services with an agreed mandate to implement the Scottish Government and COSLA's Equally Safe strategy to tackle violence against women and girls, and we report directly to the Chief Officers Group for Public Protection in Edinburgh. We're here to share our support for Edinburgh Women's Aid and to urge the City of Edinburgh Council to reject motion numbers 8.5 for the following reasons. Edinburgh Women's Aid, as you've eloquently heard, have been an invaluable member and partner service provider of violence against women services for over 50 years in Edinburgh and have undoubtedly contributed to the improvement of women's safety and well-being during that period. Unfortunately, levels of recorded domestic abuse incidents continue to rise, with police statistics showing an 11% increase in the last year nationally to 63,867 reported incidents in 23-24, of which 81% represent a male perpetrator and a female victim. We also know that that's likely to be a gross underestimate. The majority of people will not report incidents. Edinburgh Women's Aid continue to provide an excellent range of trauma-informed services, as we've just heard, including homelessness provision, child and vulnerable adult protection, and they contribute towards Edinburgh becoming a feminist city and the very successful Respect Her Space campaign around women's safety in public places. And yet, ironically, women are actually less safe in private places within their own homes. We're very saddened to see that the range of services that Edinburgh Women's Aid provide to all women are not detailed in the motion. And single-sex services for men and Edinburgh homelessness services are not being scrutinised to the same extent. More importantly, such motions around the removal of single-sex provision service for violence against women will have the unintended and direct consequences of alarming vulnerable women in need of such support, potentially leading to female survivors accessing or avoiding accessing help when they and their children most need it. Empirical evidence and evidence-based shows us that leaving an abusive relationship is statistically the most dangerous time for women and children. Every week, 2 women are killed every week in the UK by partners and former ex-partners. The same research will also show us that women who leave in a planned and coordinated manner with specialist support and adequate safe refuge provision, such as offered by Women's Aid, actually help save the lives of women and children. The courage, fear and strength to seek help should never be underestimated. A large part of funding for Edinburgh Women's Aid comes from the Council. Council colleagues are responsible for monitoring domestic abuse contracts. They're also members of the same Equally Safe Committee. They have a clear rationale for the contract for refuge provision being delivered on a single-sex basis to support and maintain the dignity, privacy and safety of women who have been affected by trauma over many years. Female survivors have fed back repeatedly that single-sex services are essential in Edinburgh and that many of them would self-exclude from services that were not single-sex, leaving them at higher risk of abuse and ultimately serious harm or worse. The Equalities Act 2010, and I quote, allows services that are single-sex to only accept people of that sex and to refuse access to people of the opposite sex, no matter how they identify, as long as the treatment is objectively justified. Therefore, contracts which invoke single-sex exemptions are acting within the law. The Equally Safe Partnership would like to also highlight that Edinburgh is very committed to being an LGBT inclusive city, but is also committed to being a trauma-informed city. This means being trauma-informed for people with all protected characteristics and the choices to actually access a single-sex or trans-inclusion service. Please consider the serious health and safety implications for the increasingly high numbers of women and children affected by coercive, pervasive forms of and controlling and abusive behaviours, and not further reducing women's choices to live a life free from emotional, physical and sexual abuse. We urge you not to support this motion. Thank you.
Well, thank you to both deputations. Can I invite you to sit at the back of the room just now until the end of the deputation session, when there may be questions addressed to you by elected members. But thank you very much indeed for your informative deputations this morning. So you may wish to prioritise amongst yourselves which questions you're going to ask. I don't want to be the person who decides in a group which one comes first. So if we will now move on to questions, and the first question, Councillor Marr. And if you could indicate which deputation you're asking, and if the questions could be succinct, we might get to a second question for each.
Thank you, Lord Provost. To ask the Edinburgh Women's Aid deputation what the consequences would be should the motion in Councillor Staniforth's name be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. So for us, the real concern in terms of the consequences around the fact that domestic abuse is a violence against women and girls issue. You heard from my colleague from Equally Safe what the stats look like. Over 80% where there's a female victim and a male perpetrator. But interestingly, in Scotland, when Domestic Abuse Scotland Act came out, when we started to prosecute coercive control, which is that coercive control and behaviour that completely diminishes women's right to life and freedom, it's well over 90% of DASA cases that have a male perpetrator and a female victim. For us, a real consequence of this could be that women stop reaching out for our life-saving support. It's really important that women feel safe, that they can trust us. And these are two of the really important trauma-informed tenets that we work upon, and it matters that women feel safe accessing our services. So that's one of the main consequences we would be really concerned about. The other is that this could open... I'm going to ask
you, if I could, to be succinct in answers, because we're trying to, within a total position of an hour, to get round each of the parties. So thank you for that.
Thank you.